of the most haunted houses in America. This is the Peyton Randolph house. First thing you would notice about this house when you would come by here during the daytime is they painted it a deep dark blood red. They did not do that to be mysterious or macabre. They did that because it is an original building from colonial days. They scraped down through all the layers of paint on it, see what the right color is for the time period they're trying to depict. This was the color. This color would have told people that passed by the house during colonial days that the man who lived in it was wealthy and powerful, because red paint was very expensive. To get a red pigment for paint, dye, or any other purpose in those days, they imported bugs from Central and South America known as cochineal beetles. They would dry the bugs and crush them into a red paste. That's how they got their pigment. They actually still use these bugs to get red pigment today, but when you see it in the list of ingredients now, it's only called cochineal. They've dropped the word beetle. I guess they don't want to gross people out. Cochineal is a prime ingredient of red dye number 5. Check your candy next time. It's also in red lipstick. But back in colonial days, this is a very expensive prospect to get all these bugs up here from Central and South America. First of all, that's Spanish territory. Anything you buy down there is going to have a hefty price on it if you're a British person. Then you got to haul all that stuff up here to Virginia, and the darker you want your red, the more the bugs you have to crush. As dark a red as they used on this house, as big as this house is, they crushed millions of bugs here. This cost a fortune. But Peyton Randolph could afford it. He was the Speaker of the House of Burgesses here in Williamsburg for many years. When he left the House of Burgesses, he was to go sit in the First Continental Congress up in Philadelphia, where he was elected President of the First Continental Congress. He was also elected President of the Second Continental Congress. But he died of a massive stroke shortly after that election and was succeeded by John Hancock from Massachusetts. Peyton Randolph was one of Thomas Jefferson's cousins on his mother's side of the family. Somebody Thomas Jefferson would come to visit quite often when he was a young man. He had what was considered to be the most extensive library of any single person in all of the Americas. When he died, Thomas Jefferson got his library. Thomas Jefferson had already amassed quite a library of his own by that point. Those two libraries combined became the beginning of the U.S. Library of Congress. Most historians agree if Peyton Randolph had lived, likelihood is very high he would have become our first president instead of George Washington. George Washington didn't want the job. He'd retired to Mount Vernon after the war was over. He probably planned to stay there. He did not run for president. They elected him by acclaim. Then they had to talk him into taking the job. Peyton Randolph was primed and ready. He just didn't quite live long enough. Now, excuse me? How old was he when he died? He was in his 50s. So he had lived a fairly long life for a man at that time. But the wealthy people did tend to live a bit longer than the average person. So. But there are two hot spots in this house where most of the activity takes place, and they're both in the oldest portion of the house, which is from the front door over to this left end. This section of the house is completed in late 1715, early 1716. Not long after it was completed, about 2 years or so, it was purchased by Peyton Randolph's father, Sir John Randolph. He then built the townhouse over here on this end for his in-laws to live in. Once that was complete, he then built the rest of the main house over to the townhouse. The walls are right up against each other, but he didn't put a door going in between. He did not want his in-laws just walking in anytime they felt like it. Now, today, Colonial Williamsburg uses the townhouse as a break room for Colonial Williamsburg employees. But the main house here behind me is an exhibit house. When things are normal around here, people tour through this house during the daytime. Now, as I said, the two hot spots are both in the old end of the house. The first is a red oak paneled bedroom just to the left of the front door on the second floor on the back side of the house. In 1961, a woman named Helen Hall Mason would come to Williamsburg to attend a wedding. And she had friends who were still living in this building at that time who had invited her to come stay with them while she was here. But the night she arrived, it was late. She's tired because she's been traveling most of the day. She asked her host and hostess if they minded very much. She went directly to bed. And they said, of course not. We'll catch up in the morning. And they showed her up to that beautiful bedroom. Ms. Mason didn't waste any time at all. She was in that bed very quickly, fell almost instantly asleep. But she awoke in the middle of the night because she said she felt like someone was summoning her. She could hear somebody calling her name. Helen, Helen. When she opened her eyes, there's a woman at the foot of her bed. At first she thought it was her friend that had come in to check on her, make sure everything's okay, but as her eyes adjusted to the light in the room, she realized this is not her friend. This is an older woman dressed in 18th century bed clothing with a mop hat on her head, like ladies would wear in bed in those days to keep the bed bugs out of their hair. She stared at the foot of the bed. wringing her hands, pacing back and forth, looking all around like she expects something to happen or somebody to come in. When Ms. Mason realized it wasn't her friend, it's not somebody she recognized at all, she did what any of us would have done in a similar situation. She tried to figure out what the heck is going on here. Who are you? What do you want? But the woman won't say anything to her. She won't even look at Miss Mason. All she'd do is pace back and forth, wringing her hands, looking all around like something's about to happen any moment. Miss Mason tried several more times to get her attention. Nothing worked. And that night, the moon had just risen over here in the east, but it was shrouded behind a few clouds. The clouds parted, and all of a sudden moonlight came spilling in through the east-facing window in that red oak paneled bedroom. It lit the room up so well Miss Mason could clearly see the bookcase over on the other side of the room, through the lady at the foot of the bed. That's when it dawned on her this was not flesh and blood in front of her. It kind of took her by surprise. She sat bolt upright in bed, but when she made that sudden movement, for the first time she caught the woman's attention. She jumped back away from the bed and looked at her for a couple of seconds. It was only a couple of seconds, then she's right back into her routine again, wringing her hands, pacing back and forth. And now as she's pacing back and forth, she's slowly moving away from the bed. In about 2 minutes' time, she makes it all the way across the room to the bookcase again, where she completely dissolves and disappears. Miss Mason sat there for a few minutes after this, thinking about what she'd just seen, trying to decide for sure if she had really seen that, or maybe she'd been dreaming. But after she thought about it for a few minutes, she decided, yeah, she was pretty sure she had really seen that. But then she did something I find one of the most amazing parts of the entire story. She rolled over and went back to sleep. Next morning, though, she had to decide should she tell her friends about what she'd seen, or should she just keep this to herself. I mean, you know, if she tells them, they're going to make jokes, poke fun of her. She'll never hear the end of it. But then she thought, no, these are my friends. If I can't tell them, who can I tell? So she sat down at the breakfast table that morning, told her friends all about this old woman with the wringing hands disappearing. And much to her surprise, her friends were not only not surprised to hear about it, they started apologizing to her. Oh, I'm sorry. We should have told you about her. They've seen her up there for years. Really? And you thought it was a good idea to put me in there? Now, the other hot spot is down here at the end of the house. There's a narrow staircase down at this end servants used to use to go up and down stairs. Main staircase for the families here in the middle is nice and wide, but the servants always use the narrow staircase down at the end. One morning, there's a costumed interpreter from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation in the house doing the inspection in the house, making sure the maintenance department's done their job and cleaned the house up properly before people start coming through. She's upstairs checking out the second floor. Everything looks good up there. So she comes to the staircase to come down. As she starts down the staircase, she notices there's a gentleman sitting in the chair at the bottom of the steps dressed in 18th century clothing. She thought, oh good, they sent another guide out to help me today. That's a good thing. Doing no special programs here. There's going to be a ton of people here. I was hoping they wouldn't make me do this alone today. So she's coming down the steps telling this guy how happy she is to see him. She made it about halfway down the steps when he stood up, turned around, looked her straight in the eye, probably vanished. Another costumed interpreter was in the house one morning doing the decorations for Christmas time. Christmas in colonial days is no big deal. I mean, it's just another day with an extra ceremony at the church they got to go sit for. When they got home, the kids, but that's about it for Christmas. Nothing like what people do today. Certainly no decorating like people do today. Very simple decorations with the rule, and pretty much Colonial Williamsburg does hold true to that. They will put a candle in each window in these exhibit houses, though. That is a challenge for them in this house, though, because most of the house has never been wired for electricity. There's no place to plug the candles in that they're putting in those windows. So this lady's got a sack full of candles and a sack full of batteries to run the candles she's putting in the windows up there. You know they're not using live flames. That would be just ridiculously dumb. But she's dancing around upstairs singing Christmas carols while she's doing her job. She finished upstairs. She comes to the staircase to come down to the first floor. She's got her two big sacks coming down the stairs, singing away. She notices the guy in the chair at the bottom of the steps just swaying back and forth through her Christmas carol, and she thought life was so good. She comes on down the stairs, gets down to the bottom and squeezes past the lady with her two big sacks, makes it past her and turns back to look, make sure she didn't disturb the lady, and nobody was sitting in the chair. One morning, a lady from the maintenance department comes walking in the side door over there to do the cleanup that morning. Now, as soon as she walks in the door, she sees the guy at the top of the stairs that she hasn't seen for a couple of years. it's a common thing around here. People that have worked here for a while, they might leave for some reason, take another job or move away, but something happens, they come back and they ask Colonial Williamsburg if they can get their old job back. If they were a good employee when they were here, usually Colonial Williamsburg is very happy to hire them back again because, face it, there was not a whole lot of change to history while they were gone. They can put them right back in their old job with very little retraining. They like getting their old guides back, and that's assumed what's going on here this morning. The maintenance lady walks in the door, sees her at the top of the stairs, says, "Oh, hey, you came back to work. I'm so glad. You are always one of my favorite guides here." The lady didn't say a word to her. She just turned and walked off down the hallway upstairs. The maintenance lady didn't think anything about it. She just went on with her job. She's cleaning up. A few minutes later, the door opens up again. Another guide comes walking in the door. The maintenance lady says, "I didn't expect to see you. I thought so-and-so was going to be the guide for the house today." And the guide just kind of looked at her funny and said, "Why would you think that?" She said, "Well, you know, she used to be the guide for the house all the time a couple of years ago." The other guide said, "Yes, I know, but there's no way she'll be in this house today." Maintenance lady said, "Yeah, she's right upstairs. Go say hello." The other guy jumped back and said, "What? No way. No, you don't understand. You didn't see this morning's paper, did you? She's on the obituary page. She died 2 days ago." There have been all kinds of things reported out of this house. They hear noises in here constantly. Heavy-booted footsteps in the hallways, and that sound they hear most often. People stick their head out of the room they're in to see who in the world's making all that commotion in the hallway. But as soon as your head goes through the door jamb, the noise stops. There's nobody out there. Sometimes they hear spurs jingling on the boots. Another sound they hear quite often is the sound of breaking glass. And I don't mean like somebody dropped a drinking glass or knocked out one of the little window panes here. This is more like one of those big fancy mirrors that hang on the wall in there, smashing onto the floor into a million pieces. People will run into the room to see what in the world just happened, but when they get there, they don't find any glass. They don't even find anything out of place. No reason whatsoever for all that noise they just heard. We know that there have been at least 3 suicides in this house. There may have been more. There's a whole long list of people that died in this house during colonial days. It's longer than any other 3 houses in town combined. Why so many people died here? We don't even know why they died. Medical science isn't far enough advanced in those days to figure a good cause of death out. If it's not blatantly obvious, they had very few clues about why people died, so it's not something they would generally write down in the official records. You get a person's name, a date, and a place, and usually that's the end of the information you've got. So we don't even know why most of the people that died here died. And none of the people on that list would have been black slaves, because black slaves are not considered people. They were property. The only place you found evidence of their deaths was in the owner's property records, where he recorded the financial loss. He never wrote down what happened to those people. And there's all kinds of nasty rumors about that here, because the Randolphs, particularly Mrs. Randolph, was known to be very unkind to their slaves. Several of their slaves were known to put curses on the family. Those of us who have been doing tours around here for any length of time understand that just adds to the excitement in the house. We bring mediums, psychics, sensitive people on our tours quite often. A lot of times they can't stand to stay near the house. They move away from the rest of the group while I tell everybody else the story, and will join up after we're done here. Several others tell us it's like a big, deep, dark black hole back there, and many of them have told us there are many, many spirits inside this house, and several of them are very angry. And we all agree, because we have all had our experiences with this place. First thing I can tell you I noticed about this house when I started doing the tours here 14 years ago, it does not particularly like to be photographed after the sun goes down. People try on my tours all the time, take pictures here. They're lucky if they get a good one of the house. If you got any that are good in the house, consider yourself fortunate. Sometimes the house just does not allow them at all. But if you do get a good picture of the house that you can see the house in, that you took after the sun's gone down, you need to take a very close look at that picture when you get a chance, because if you can see the house in the picture taken after dark here, there's almost always something weird in that picture somewhere. If you look on our Facebook page, go to Facebook, and then go to the Original Ghost Tour, and pull up photos. One of the photos you'll find is a picture of me standing in front of this house taken in 2008. Now, I'm a bit younger then, darker beard, not filled in on the sides yet. But somebody took my picture that night. The house showed up behind me as well as any picture I've seen taken through the years. But it looks like it's on fire back there behind me. It looks like there's flames shooting out the lower floor windows. I can guarantee you folks it was not on fire that night. I can also tell you that that picture was not photoshopped, because that's exactly what it looked like on the back of their camera right after they took the picture. They were going nuts. They showed me the picture. I begged them to please send it to us. They did. We've been grateful ever since.
You can't see the house.
I'm out here one night on the special late night version of this tour. Instead of starting it at 8:15 that night, we started it at 10:30. So it's after midnight, and I'm standing here telling the story that night. It was really dark that night, just like tonight, just stars up there and no moon. The street lamp over here was out, and it was before they put the lights on the buildings over there too, because it's really dark out here that night. I'm in the middle of telling my story. All of a sudden this noise starts up behind me. Turned around and looked back there, but I couldn't see anything. It was too dark, but I could hear it, and I knew what it was. And everybody in my group knew what it was too. There's a doorknob on the front door back there, jiggling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's after midnight. There is nobody in that house, but that door handle is just going to town back there. I just shut up. I did not say another word till it finally stopped, maybe about 45 seconds to a minute later. Then my group wanted to have a long conversation about it before we went on with the rest of our tour that night. I'm out here one night on our traditional tour, the 8 o'clock tour that we've been doing here for 32 years here in Williamsburg. Now when I finish with this house on my early tour, my traditional tour, I leave and go across the green there. So now I'm walking across that green backwards. My groups follow me away, listening to my news stories as I'm going away from the house. They've all got their backs to the house now. I'm the only one looking this direction, so I'm walking backwards. And that upper left-hand window at the top of that staircase I just told you folks about, a bright white light flared up, so bright it looked like a star lit up in the window. But it got to its peak of brightness and started fading away again. 2 seconds time, it's back to black. I have no idea what it was, but I thought to myself that night, I gotta come back here after my tour's over. Maybe I can figure out what that was. So I came back, and as I'm coming across the green, I saw the security guard's car sitting over there on the side street. I know he's in there checking the house out. I got right up to the street here when he came out the front door. He turned and locked the door behind him and walked over towards his car with his head down, shaking his head back and forth. I talk to these guys all the time at night out here after my tours are over. They're great guys. We get along fine. They know I'm going to call them if I see anything going on out here that shouldn't be happening. I've done it a few times. But I called out to him that night. Everything okay? Startled the heck out of the guy. He jumps at what? And he saw who it was. He said, oh man, don't do that to me. I said, well, what's the matter? Everything okay? He said, yeah, but not really. I said, why? What's wrong? He said, well, you know, I got to go through the house every 2 hours and I'm on duty overnight. I said, I know, but you guys don't usually do that alone. I've always found 2 of you in the house at night when I catch you here. He said, yeah, I don't like it much when they send me over here by myself, but I was in there 2 hours ago and everything was fine. This time when I walked through the house, there is stuff moved around all over the house. I said, really? Then I told him what I'd seen just 15 or 20 minutes before that. He said, yeah, no, there's been nobody in the house. They have to let us know if they're in there doing any work. Nobody's been in the house tonight. Yeah, there's definitely stuff going on in the house. If a spirit would like to speak, please show me your yes sign.
Oh.